My own experience with this little potion called testosterone and other compounds. In this video, guys, I'm going to show you exactly how I went from this guy to this guy, but how it was actually a bad thing. And I would almost recommend to not do steroids, and I'm going to talk about that. But it seems like in this industry, when I'm going across videos like this, everybody is lying to you. For example, guys lying to you, David Lade's lying to you, Jeff says lying to you. These are just basic examples in the fitness niche. But what I find out and what it's hard to fathom is I think 60% of guys are steroid users or they have touched steroids. So here's my experience with steroids and why I would honestly say stay away from it as long as possible. Unless you're maybe over the age of 25 or you plan to do some professional competition or you're in the fitness industry. But again, if you're just an average guy, you don't need to be touching steroids. But here's why I started and why it was initially so bad. So I'm that guy that likes shortcuts. You can see here, I was around about 21 or so, and I'll show you the before and after, but I like shortcuts and everything. I was way too young. I was barely in the gym, and the natty gains still could have been milked. But, you know, I'm addicted. I've got this addictive personality where I want to make as much money as possible. I've always had that, and, you know, when I started the gym, I was like, okay, well, there must be a faster way to do this. And lo and behold, you know, you get interested to this little guy, and before you know it, you're doing a full blast. But the experience at first, it was great. Gains were flying off basically 500 grams of testosterone a week. And this is way too much, guys. Like, this is way too much that I would even touch right now. But when you were back in the day, like 10 years or so ago, you were reading all these bodybuilding forums, and everybody basically said, just start 500 milligrams of test. That's the best kind of base to start. And I would even say that's way too high right now. For example, I'm doing 240 milligrams a week. It's like a TRT dosage. So I was blasting at 18-year-old, double than what I was doing back then, if that makes sense. But again, I wanted to add also stuff for this. Once you do your first testosterone cycle, people say do it for 12 weeks, and then you start to go, okay, well, what else can I add? And that's when it became pretty bad. And I'm going to tell about what happened and why it was bad. So it became an ever-end pursuit of wanting more. For example, I started on test Anthony, so pretty mild. Like I said, it was a high dosage, especially for an 18-year-old, but nothing bad is really going to happen for testosterone. But you do your first cycle, and it's like, okay, well, you're supposed to come off, and I never came off, just because I'm a maniac. But a lot of people don't come off, or they come off for a couple of weeks, and then like it gets in your head, like, oh, now I'm small, you're going to lose all these gains, and that's what happens to me. So you would jump on D-ball, you would jump on Anavar, and again, these are mild, but you'd start to see some side effects just mentally. Like I would just get so agitated, and it just became pretty bad to hold any sort of relationship or hold any job because I would get super pissed off. And then you start adding other compounds like Equipoise and then Primo. The worst one is, of course, Trenbolone, because that just turns you into a madman, and I would just stay away from Trenbolone. The gains are amazing, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to promote anything, but the gains on Tren are probably one of the best things you'll ever experience in your life. But the counter effect of that is you're super pissed off all the time. You can't hold a relationship. Like, everything is going wrong, but you're strong as fuck in the gym. And you can basically eat whatever you want, which is why it's so prevalently used. And you don't need a lot of this stuff to really fucking get sauce out your mind. But again, mentally for me and a lot of other guys that I know, it just fucks you up completely. So I would stay away from this as much as possible if you were considering doing anything along these lines. So here's what happened to me and why I primarily stopped taking steroids, except from obviously TRT. You know, I started to do this as a kind of job, believe it or not, a naked butler, where you would go out, get paid a lot of money, but you would be in this drugs and alcohol kind of vibe, and that is never going to mix well with steroids. You should only really do one drug of choice. A lot of people, 9-to-5ers, they would just choose drink and cocaine, maybe. But if you start combining this with steroids, your heart's going to be having a problem, and that's primarily what happened to me. There's a quick screenshot of a video. Went to hospital. I was working in my 9-to-5 job, and I was doing some calls, and then my heart just started to go. My girlfriend had to come pick me up, and I was in hospital, and I was pretty much told, hey, you know, your heart's like 2x as big, and you've got some bad stuff in your liver. And that was just because of all the drugs and alcohol and the Primo and then the Tren and then the D-ball and then all this things just attacking your liver. The good thing about the liver is this will come back. I recovered pretty fast. But then that was kind of the last straw for me. This was me just kind of hitting peak. You could see the physique as well was starting to deteriorate if you go back. You know, here's kind of peak physique, and believe it or not, I'm only like 21 here, so I've only been training for like 2 to 3 years, and this is nowhere near peak physique, but this is when everything was dialed in. Food dialed in, no girls dialed in, everything's dialed in, you start mixing this with drugs and alcohol, your physique starts to deteriorate. And I was taking more drugs here, right? So you can see how still primarily food isn't important, because your physique and drugs and alcohol, you're getting no sleep, you're making no gains, everything's just becoming super, super hard. So that's why I stopped. And here's what I'd recommend to my younger self. Stay natty as long as you possibly can, guys. Noob games are basically steps. So if you're brand new, you're 16, 17, maybe you're even 25, maybe you're even 35, you've never been to the gym and you're looking to go in the gym, get in the gym. And do not start taking anything just because all these movie stars, you're watching all these superheroes. Yes, it can be very... It sucks because a lot of these guys are massive, but that's because they're lying to you. A lot of these influencers on TikTok and Instagram, they're all fake natties. So stay natty as long as possible. And then just basically just do test. If you were ever to do anything, I wouldn't recommend anything more than test, because mentally, if you're trying to grow a business, you just can't do anything more than test. Test, believe it or not, is great for actually a business. It keeps you motivated, it keeps you hungry. But again, I would never actively recommend anybody to take testosterone. But if you're going to do it, you're probably going to do it already. I would just stick to testosterone. That's what I would stick to my younger self. Your body can do more than you think. So your body can grow fantastically well as a natty. But again, if you want to go to that next level, the dark side, just test is all you need. For me, I will probably just cruise on 200 to 240 milligrams of test. I'm probably going to do this forever. I don't see myself going back to natural, but it's very hard to look at this and start to think, okay, well, I could take this, I took this, but I promise you it's a bad cycle, no pun intended, because you start doing some crazy stuff and like the business just goes down and you just become a gym junkie. You combine this with drugs and alcohol and everything else, and then this is what happens to you. So that's what I'd recommend to my younger self. If you are thinking about doing any of this stuff, keep it as natty as long as possible. Just take test and you'll be absolutely fine.